Thank you for joining me for another reading through the New Testament today. We're in Hebrews chapter 8, reading from the English Standard Version. Now, the point in what we are saying is this. We have such a high priest, one who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the Majesty on high, a minister in the holy places, in the true tent that the Lord set up, not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer gifts and sacrifices. Thus it is necessary for this priest also to have something to offer. Now, if he were on earth, he would not be a priest at all. Since there are priests who offer gifts according to the law, they serve a copy and shadow of the heavenly things. For when Moses was about to erect the tent, he was instructed by God, saying, "See that you make everything according to the pattern that was shown you on the mountain." But as it is, Christ has obtained a ministry that is as much more excellent than the old as the covenant he mediates is better, since it is enacted on better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, there would have been no occasion to look for a second. For he finds fault with them when he says, "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will establish a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. For they did not continue in my covenant, and so I showed no concern for them, declares the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my laws into their minds, and write them on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall not teach each one his neighbor, and each one his brother, saying, Know the Lord. For they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, for I will be merciful toward their iniquities, and I will remember their sins no more." In speaking of a new covenant, he makes the first one obsolete. And what is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to vanish away. So as the author of Hebrews begins his conclusions about the superiority of Christ's priesthood, the superiority of Christ's covenant, and certainly the superiority of his ministry as a priest in the sacrifice that he has offered, he says everything about it is based on better promises. A promise that came from God that said a new covenant would come, and in bringing that new covenant, the writer of Hebrews says, really to encourage faithfulness in Christians and not returning back to Judaism, by saying that he is doing away with the first covenant. If there wasn't a need for a second, if there was nothing wrong with the first, there would have been no need for a second. And by bringing the second, the first one is growing old, obsolete, and ready to vanish away. Three things that he says about the old covenant: obsolete, growing old, and ready to vanish away. It's important for us to see that while the Old Testament offers us great insight into God, great insight into God's faithfulness, and the demands of faithfulness that he places upon us as people, its purpose was fulfilled in Jesus Christ's coming. And in that truth is this assurance that if God purposed and planned to accomplish all of that through Jesus Christ, imagine what God is planning ahead for us. May that encourage you today and make your weekday a strong day with the Word of God. Join me again tomorrow for another reading in the New Testament.
Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let your love increase. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Walls of pride and prejudice shall cease when we are your instruments of peace.
Where there is hatred, we will sow his love.
instruments of peace. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let your love increase. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Walls of pride and prejudice shall cease when we are your instruments of peace.
Where there is blindness, we will pray for sight.
Where there is darkness, we will shine his light.
Where there is sadness, we will bear their grief.
To the millions crying for release, we will be his instruments of peace. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let your love increase. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Walls of pride and prejudice shall cease when we are your instruments of peace.